Esteban Lara arrived always to the offices on the 31st floor with the same firm step, the same suit impeccable, and the same expression of someone who doesn't let anything touch him. President of one of the conglomerates further powerful of the country, their life. It took place between figures, meetings strategic and a millimetrically precise agenda organized. Her office was so neat as him. Glass, steel, marble, nothing out of place. That night, however, something broke his routine. Upon returning from a video conference later, found a little girl small kneeling in the floor, rubbing carefully an invisible stain on the carpet. It was almost 10 o'clock and the building ought be empty, but there was she, with a dirty rag in the hand and a serene expression that did not correspond to his age. "That you do here?" he asked. He, more surprised than annoyed. The girl stood up naturally, as if I weren't there doing nothing strange. "My Aunt Marta told me that if wanted to stay with her, I had to help, that I had to behave well and earn a place." His voice was soft, but his words carried weight. As lead, Esteban, for a second, didn't know what to answer. He was not a father. He did not have siblings small. I had no idea what to do with one little girl in his office, but something in that look firm, in that a mixture of obedience and quiet sadness, shook something inside him that he had never felt before. I knew. It existed without thinking about it much. Took his cell phone, dialed your number, lawyer, and said, "I need to know if this is legal. Now." The lawyer arrived in less than an hour, still with the pajama bag peeking out from under the coat. He checked documents, made questions discreetly to the girl, and then looked to Esteban with a mixture of surprise and respect. "This is neither legal nor moral. That woman, this using the minor as maid. We can initiate a temporary guardianship process, but it's going to be complicated." Esteban didn't hesitate. "Do it. Whatever has to be done, I don't care." Scandal. And for first time in years, his words did not come from a script, but from a conviction that overwhelmed him. Lucía stayed that evening in Esteban's penthouse guest apartment. He offered her warm milk and a soft blanket, and although she felt ridiculous asking him, I wanted a stuffed animal, he made it same. She shook her head, still composed. "I don't have nightmares." "I'm accompanied," she said, as who has learned to protect herself. Esteban stayed some minutes in a doorframe, watching her close the eyes, wondering how was it possible that a little girl so lived in the shadows of a city where he commanded he didn't understand. By what had but that little mattered to him more than ever believed that someone could care about. In the morning next, Esteban did not go to the office. He cancelled meetings, something unthinkable. For him, and took Lucía to breakfast in a cafe calm. He observed how the girl elegy his bread carefully and ate in silence, like feared do something wrong. He didn't ask for anything extra. He didn't leave crumbs, did not interrupt. Esteban, accustomed to adults who spoke too much, he found in that silence a new form of communication. "Where are your parents?" he asked bluntly. Lucía shrugged. "My mom left. She was sad. Very sad, and she left. And your dad?" "I do to know him. I've never seen him." The naturalness with which he said that threw him off. With the help of his legal team, Esteban started his temporary custody process. What seemed a management administrative became quickly in a battle. Marta, the aunt, presented a demand claiming that he had took the girl without permission. He claimed that she was his only family, who only wanted to educate her with discipline. But the records showed other thing. Previous complaints for abandonment. Neighbors confirmed the screams and punishments. And even a teacher who had reported that Lucía was arriving to class, sleepy, without breakfast, and with bruises that no one explained. Esteban did not stop. For the first time once upon a time, a cause took him out of himself same. If this part touched you, subscribe to the channel. We need your support to continue telling stories like this. While the legal case was progressing, Esteban began to notice small changes in his routine. He no longer arrived at the company before the sun, nor responded mail during dinner. It started to learn things basic than ever there was needed to know. How comb simple braids, what stories liked one 6-year-old girl, how detect a fever without a thermometer. Lucía, by his part, began to let go. He spoke more, he asked things, he laughed short when I was trying cook. They adapted each other as Yehi destination had decided, compensate them by so many losses accumulated. Esteban was surprised how much he liked it arrive home and hear small footsteps in a hurry by the hallway. One afternoon, while ordered documents with your secretary, Esteban found a file, Human Resources. The name caught his attention, Mariana Lopez. He felt a chill. It was Lucia's mother. When he checked his file, discovered that there was been assistant in his marketing area 4 years ago. There was left in silence, without a formal resignation letter, with a brief note of voluntary resignation. By continuing pulling the thread, they appeared mail filed, complaints ignored, and a report confidential about a harassment complaint against a manager. Everything pointed to Mariana having been pressured to leave to protect to someone important. And Stephen, the man who believed have control of everything, I had no idea that something like that there was passed under his command. That night, Esteban did not sleep. He stayed in his office, with the lights off and Mariana's folder on her legs, reviewing one and the other time the documents. I felt a mixture of guilt, anger, and shame. How there was been so blind? How was it possible that in his own company it would have been silence to a vulnerable woman without him knowing? And the worst, Mariana had not only lost his employment, there was also lost the strength to continue, leaving his daughter in the hands of a cruel sister. Suddenly, protecting Lucía wasn't just an act of compassion, it was a moral debt, a reparation. In the morning next, he called for a meeting, extraordinary council meeting manager. He entered the room with a tense face and the folder in the hand. Some partners looked at him with discomfort. Carmen, his sister, and one of the main shareholders looked down when they saw his name on the cover. Esteban didn't hesitate. He placed the folder on the table and said, "We need to talk about Mariana Lopez, about what happened and what we're hiding." There was silence. Dense. Carmen tried to interrupt, but he raised his hand firmly. No more cover-ups, no more silences. If this company is going to have future, it has to be cleaned up from inside. And that starts today. The meeting turned tense. Some they tried minimize the facts, others proposed handle it in a discreet way. But Esteban was categorical. They would open an internal investigation, they would collaborate with the prosecutor's office if necessary, and would provide support, psychological and legal, to any former employee who had been silenced. For many, that decision, it was a suicide business. For him, it was the only path ethical possible. I prefer lose investors before following being accomplice to something like that, she declared without trembling. Carmen, cornered by the tests, barely could defend themselves. Their participation in Mariana's case was clear. There was intervened to prevent the scandal came to light, fearing that it would affect your image and that of the company. While everything it happened, Lucía continued attending school, learning to play, to make mistakes without fear, to ask for hugs without guilt. In his backpack, he no longer carried rags or cleaning products, but books, colors, and a snack prepared with care by Esteban each tomorrow. He discovered a new world through her. He took her by first time at the movies. He got excited seeing her do his first exposure in class, and almost the night cried when Lucía called him Dad without hesitation. It was like, yeah, those 3 letters, they will seal something that already existed between them, but now had name. Stephen felt that for first, once upon a time, your home wasn't just a space tidy, it was a home. Are you excited to see how is a family born from love? So subscribe. It's the only way we can continue sharing transformative stories. Esteban's lawyer warned him, final custody process would not be simple. Although Marta had lost credibility, he continued being the relative consanguineous further close. But the change. In Lucía, it was so evident, so tangible, that even the attendees' social began to lean for staying with Esteban. Interviews, visits, home visits, reports, school children. Each step reinforced the same idea. The girl was not only protected, was happy. And that weighed more than any blood bond. She does not need an aunt who exploits her. She needs a figure stable, someone to teach him to trust. Again, he said a psychologist in his report. Esteban, by inside he wondered, was prepared to be that figure. But his answer permission each night, when Lucía snuggled up next to him in his sofa without asking permission. One day, while they were looking for a book ancient in a study, Lucía found a wooden box that belonged to Esteban's father. Inside there was photographs in black and white, cards, and a medal military. "Was this your dad?" he asked curiously. Esteban nodded, with a knot in the throat. I hadn't spoken about him in years. He was a very serious man, demanding. He never hugged me. Lucía looked at him with those eyes that read everything, and, without saying anything, went up to him and hugged him. Strong. That simple gesture broke something in Esteban. He understood that history wouldn't repeat itself, that he still had time to be different. Mariana's case began to attract attention. Media. A journalist independent managed to access fragments of the file and published a devastating note about her concealment at the company Lara and Associates. Esteban was summoned to testify, not as accused, but as key witness who had uncovered the network of abuse and silence. It was the first time he sat down in front of cameras, not as executive successful, but like a man in process of redemption. For years, I thought that being efficient was enough, that while all it worked, the rest didn't matter. I was wrong, he whispered to the microphones. Lucía watched the interview from home in television and drew a heart next to his face on the screen. That same 1 week, Mariana appeared. It was the school that located her by confirming the new surname in Lucía's registration. Mariana showed up trembling, with dull eyes and sweaty hands. Esteban recognized her immediately. She was more thinner, more fragile, but still had that sweetness silent that Lucía described. She didn't ask custody. He didn't claim anything. He just wanted to see your daughter. The first thing she said when she came in, it was, "I'm not here to take it away from you. I know it's okay with you. I just need to see her." And when Lucía hugged her without reproach, without judgment, Esteban understood that that girl was much further braver than ever there was been. Mariana began to visit Lucía once time by week. Sometimes they were wearing dolls, sometimes they just sat and painted together or watched albums. At first, Lucía kept certain distance as protect a space internal still wounded. But with the time, the silences became further comfortable, laughter further frequent. Stephen observed from the kitchen, taking care not to interfere, but always present. Mariana thanked him several times for not having it judged, by have take care of your daughter when she couldn't. "I don't know. Someday I will be able to forgive me," he said at night. "But seeing her well gives me hope." Esteban nodded. In silence, I knew that some wounds did not close completely, but at least could stop bleeding. In parallel, the company entered in a transformation phase. Esteban restructured areas complete, dismissed executives involved in the cases of cover-up, and implemented policies strict protection and transparency. The press called him Businessman of the Year, not for his numbers, but by his courage ethics. But to him, he was not interested in the headlines. His greatest achievement awaited him each late coming home. One girl with braids disheveled that ran to hug him tightly. Lucía began to sleep with a new stuffed animal, one that Esteban had given her, bought without knowing what it was, just like her there was, had as a baby. "Now I have everything," he said she a night. "Want a mom who visits me, a dad who takes care of me, and a rabbit who doesn't leave me alone." One Sunday morning, while we're preparing pancakes together, Lucía asked, something that left to Esteban breathlessly. "Do you think one can have two moms?" He put down the spatula on the table and looked at it carefully. "Why do you ask?" "Because I feel like I have a mom from before who was sad, and a mom now who is trying not to be. Esteban bent down to his side height. Then, yes, of course you can, and you can too, have 2 houses, 2 futures, everything you do well. Lucía smiled, satisfied, and went back to mixing the dough. For her, it was as simple as that. With the time, Lucía stopped looking at the ground when speaking, of asking permission for everything, to apologize by exist. He learned that he could make a mistake, which could cry without being called weak. Stephen, in change, he discovered that love was not built with expensive gifts, not with big words, but with routine small ones. Wait for her at the school exit, warm up his soup favorite when had fever, lend it attention. When I spoke to him about unicorns, they both healed from places different, but they were found in the same point, the keen, sincere. What there was started as an accident of life. It was transforming in a royal family. One day, Lucía's teacher called to Esteban to tell him that the girl there was written a drafting titled My Hero. It was a school project where each student I had to talk about someone who admired. Esteban could not imagine what he was going to read. Lucía wrote, My hero has no layers, but has ties boring. My hero doesn't know how to comb his hair very well, but it makes me braids. Same. My hero rescued me without a horse, just with a cold. My hero didn't ask me to be perfect. He wanted me just like that, the way I am. When reading those lines, Esteban felt a knot in a chest. It was validation deeper than there was received in his life. That text became a small symbol at school. The principal asked permission to share it on the main billboard, and several teachers used it as example in classes about family, empathy, and resilience. Esteban found it difficult to get used to that new role. He was no longer just the respected CEO. He was now also the Lucía's father. In the supermarket, in line at the movies, at parent-teacher conferences, and although at first it threw him, he soon began to feel something he hadn't sensed never. Pride by who he was, not for what he had. That title, that of Dad Chosen, it was worth more than all his diplomas and awards. The relationship with Mariana continued moving forward with respect and care. Lucía knew that her mother was healing, and Mariana understood that Esteban had occupied a place that she could not hold during years. It was then when arose a proposal unexpected. Mariana wanted to move into an apartment close to be able to be further present without destabilizing Lucía's routine. I don't want to take away what he has with you. I just want form, part of their daily life, he said honestly. Esteban, after thinking about it and talking it over with the girl, agreed. Because understood that Mariana's presence was not a threat, but a possibility of completeness for Lucía. That new arrangement brought further challenges. Lucía began to divide her weekends, to spend some afternoons with Mariana and others with Esteban. And although at first that gendered certain insecurity in both adults, they soon noticed that the girl didn't lose anything. She gained stories with her mom, snacks shared, bedtime conversations, and he also maintained his bond firm with Esteban. One night, as she went to bed, Lucía said, I'm lucky. I don't have to choose. I have 2 people who love me and understand me, and that doesn't have all he world. Esteban hugged her tightly. He didn't need further confirmation that this. In the company, the consequences of your decisions continued. Some shareholders walked away, arguing that the scandals had damaged the corporate image. Others, in change, they praised the transparency and ethics that Esteban had driven. But he wasn't willing to back down. He restructured the board, opened spaces for women in leadership positions, and promoted a new culture organizational based in respect, equity, and careful. What there was started as a crisis, it became an opportunity to redo all from the root. If we don't change by inside, everything else is facade, he repeated in each meeting. One afternoon, Lucía fell in the park and scraped her knee. Nothing serious, but enough to make her cry heartbroken. Esteban carried her in arms to the bench more close and took a handkerchief out of his pocket. She hugged her neck with strength, with that trust that only one has when one knows that it will not be abandoned. "It hurts," he said through tears. "I know, little one, but I'm here," he replied him. In that instant, he understood that this kind of pain was part of growing up, and that his role was not to prevent Lucía from suffering, but accompany her with tenderness when that will pass, like no one else there was made with it. As the months passed, Lucía began to speak more of your past, of the days at Marta's house, of how she learned to clean, to be quiet, not to cry. Esteban listened to her without interrupting, breathing deep so as not to show the pain they caused him those confessions. "I wasn't trying correct, neither minimize. I was just there, present, offering you a place sure where to vent. I thought that if I behaved well, they would love me," he said. "Sheer afternoon, sitting on the living room carpet. And now, what? Do you think," he asked, "that they love me even if I'm wrong? And that's better." Esteban dried himself surreptitiously a tear. That girl was teaching how to live. One night, after a school meeting, Mariana asked to talk alone with Esteban. They sat down in a bench in front of the school, under a dim streetlight. "I've been thinking, when this further stable, I would like go back to work. But I don't want to return to that world. I want help to others, women as I, who were silenced." Esteban nodded with pride, genuine. "I can help you to put something together, whatever you need." So a new project was born, a foundation to accompany women victims of abuse, labor, and psychological. Mariana in front, Esteban as support, Lucía as inspiration, something that started with pain. Now it served to transform others' lives. Foundation's first event was modest but emotional. Mariana spoke in front of a group reduced number of women, counting his history without hiding the cracks. At the end, several assistants approached him crying, thanking him by dare to say what so many they were silent. Esteban watched her from the background, without intervening, but with a admiration sincere than few times there was sensed by someone. Lucía, sitting in front row with one flower drawn in his hand, he clapped with a smile filled with pride. That night, upon returning home, the girl, he said, "My mom is strong, and so are you." And then he added, almost in whisper, "That's why I am too." At home, the routines followed, consolidating. Sundays were sacred. Long breakfasts, walks in the park, movies in his sofa. Wednesdays they played tasks together, and the Friday, homemade pizza with ingredients that Lucía chose. Those simple rituals, invisible to the outside world, were the basis of their link. They didn't need explanations, neither papers signed to know they were family. One night, Esteban found a drawing about his pillow. It was him, Lucía and Mariana, holding hands under a tree. Upstairs, in letters crooked but clear, said, "My home is where they love me." Esteban hugged a paper, as who holds an irrefutable truth. One afternoon, while we're preparing a presentation for school, Lucía asked I could use the Esteban's last name. "It's not that I don't love my mum," he clarified. "It's that I also want to be a Lara, because you're my family too, aren't you?" Esteban felt that his heart stopped for a second. I didn't expect that request, and much except for the emotion it caused him. "Of course, Lucía, you are everything a Lara should be, brave, fair, bright." They decided not to make a legal change immediately, but at the presentation, along with his name, Lucía wrote Lucía López Lara and read it with a smile, proud in front of the whole class. That little one gesture triggered a conversation with Mariana. Sitting in his same park bench where so many things had started, they talked about her future. Mariana was Clara. "Lucía is happy with you, and if one day he decides to live further with you than with me, I will accept it, because I learned that being a mother is also knowing when to give in. That's the best for you, son." Esteban shook his head, moved. "She need Mariana. I never go to occupy you place. I just share it." That night, the three they had dinner together, not as parts separated from one history difficult, but as a team that was learning to reinvent itself. The school organized a day of doors open where each student I had to introduce her family. Lucía insisted, in which they were the three, Esteban, Mariana, and her. When she arrived, his turn stopped in front of everyone with a cardboard full of drawings. My family isn't like everyone else's, but it's perfect for me. I have a mom who is healing, a dad who takes care of me, and the two of them teach me that I don't need do things to make them love me. Just be me. The applause was spontaneous, but what most excited Esteban was looked at, grateful to Mariana. At that moment, she understood that together we're raising a little girl complete, without breaks. Days later, Lucía had fever high. Esteban took her running to the hospital and did not leave his side, not even a second. Mariana arrived and how much received the call, and they both spent the night taking turns wetting his forehead and holding his hand. It was nothing serious, an infection mild, but the experience that joined still more. Upon leaving the hospital, Lucía joked, "It was ugly, but it was nice that the two of them were there, like two wings of the same bird." Esteban and Mariana looked at each other in silence. That phrase, said between laughter and snot, summed up all that they were building. As Lucía grew up, so did his curiosity. One night he asked her to Esteban what he was like as a child. He hesitated. He was not accustomed to talking about himself, same. But they sat down on the bedroom carpet and told him that he had been a child, very serious, that I didn't know ask love, and that many times I felt that I should earn her father's love. Lucía looked at him fixedly and said, "Then we were similar, but you are me teaching not to repeat that." That sentence left him speechless, because yes, there was something healing in that mirror shared. Esteban was not only raising a girl, was re-educating the child that he there was been. Mariana, by his part, began to give workshops for women in situation of vulnerability. His story became in motor for others who thought there was no exit. Lucía used to accompany her, sit down in a background and draw while listened. One day, one of the assistants approached her and said, "Your mother is very brave." Lucía smiled and replied, "Yes, and my dad too," because the two chose not to give up. That girl, who had been made invisible, she was now a living witness that love, when it is built from the truth, can transform what seemed impossible. One winter night, while the city slept under a rain persistent, Esteban found Lucía in the living room, looking out the window with a serious expression. "Is something wrong, little one?" he asked. Approaching, "I was thinking, what if one day they leave, you or Mom? What if I'm left alone again? Time." Esteban knelt down, forehead to she, taking his hands. "Lucía, nobody can promise that it will be forever, but I can promise you this. I'm not leaving to go without fighting by be with you, not a single day." She hugged him strong, like his little. A body, I'd like memorize those words, and that evening slept calm, knowing that the abandonment was no longer his destination. The day the final custody was resolved, Esteban did not wait in his office. He went to court accompanied by Lucía and Mariana. The judge, after reviewing reports and testimonies, granted legal shared custody, Mariana as biological mother, Esteban as permanent and responsible guardian effective. It was an unconventional arrangement, but adjusted to the reality of that family that had broken the mold. As they left, Lucía took both of their hands and said, "Does that mean you are done, our officers?" And laughing, Mariana replied, "Yes, daughter, we are now a family with papers and everything." That night they celebrated with a dinner simple at home. Lucía chose he menu, spaghetti with meatballs, its dish favorite. Mariana brought a cake, and Esteban prepared a list of songs that Lucía liked. They danced in the room, they laughed, they made shadow play with flashlights. There were no expensive gifts, neither toast sophisticated, but the atmosphere was full of something that Esteban had late decades in understand: peace. As she lay down, Lucía looked at the ceiling and murmured, "I used to dream of escaping. Now I dream of staying." And Esteban, from the doorway, felt that he needed nothing more in life. As time went by, the story of Lucía and Esteban began to reach far away. A journalist published a report about non-traditional family models and included as example of resilience and chosen love. They were invited to talks, events, even to a university where they spoke about paternity conscious. Esteban was not looking for exhibition, but I understood that making visible his experience could open paths for others. "I'm not a hero," he said in an interview. "I just decided not to look anywhere else. Sighed when I saw one injustice. And in doing so, I discovered a way of loving that I didn't know existed." In one of those events, a woman in the audience asked him to Esteban, yes, some time had been repentant. He saved silence some seconds before answering, "I regret not having open eyes before. If I hadn't seen the pain that had behind certain silences, but never, not for a single day, have I regretted having opened the door to Lucía. She saved me as much as I to she." The room was left in silence. Mariana, sitting at her side, squeezed his hand. It was a testimony that spoke of loss, yes, but all about choice and reconstruction. That testimony went viral. People from different parts of the country. They wrote letters, messages, even they sent drawings, facts by children who felt identified with Lucía. Some single mothers, they found force in Mariana's story. Some businessmen began to review their own structures internal, and although all that was valuable, Esteban always, I came back to the same point. None of that mattered more than Lucía's laughter, in her breakfast or his habit of falling asleep with one foot out of the sheet. The real change was not in his speech, but in his bond daily life that followed, growing daily. One day, Lucía came home with a cardboard box decorated with glitter and stickers. "It's for you," she said, to Stephen, extending it to him. Inside, there was drawings, a letter written in handwriting still unstable, and a sign that said, "Dad of the Heart." Esteban could not avoid cry when reading what the letter said. "Thank you for not giving up. Thank you for make me feel important. Thank you for to stay." It was a gratitude that came without demand, without debt, pure. And in that moment he understood that the love that is not imposed, that is not expected, is the one that most transforms. If you've made it this far, it's because this story moved you. Support us with your subscription so we can continue creating content like this. That same weekend, they organized a picnic in He Park, and they three, like so many sometimes. But this once Lucía took a wish list that there was written with the help of his teacher. Among them, travel to the snow, have a pet, make a tree house, and sleep a night under the stars. Esteban read the list in voice high and promised help her fulfill each one. "Although the one with the snow will require further coats," he joked. Mariana laughed and said, "I'll take care of the suitcases." It was a scene, simple but revealing. The Lucía's dreams were now dreams shared. The first time Lucía saw snow, it was months later, on a trip to the mountains that they planned between the three. As he stepped on it, he shouted with joy and fell on his back, laughing out loud. Esteban watched her with a smile still, like who try engrave each second in memory. Mariana took them out photos, and in one of them captured a moment that became everyone's favorite. Lucía, with the arms open, Esteban behind her making a snow angel, and both covered in light. It was the first time that they felt that in some way the winter could be warm. After the trip, Lucía took that photo to school and used it in an exposure about "my place, happy." He didn't choose a country or an object, he chose that moment. "My place happy is when I feel cared for, when I know that if I fall, someone will pick me up," he said, in front of his class. Her teacher, visibly excited, she shared that phrase at the parents' meeting. Esteban listened to her with shining eyes. He knew that security emotional was something that not everyone the children had, and that somehow he had helped to build, without having done so planned, never. In a school talk about the rights of the children, Lucía raised her hand decisively. I I learned that the children, we have the right to play, to ask, not to work, and above all, everything, to which we want without having to do merits. There was a murmur among the parents present, followed by applause spontaneous. Esteban, sitting in the back of the room, he felt a lump in the throat. He remembered the girl who had acquaintance scrubbing a floor at 10 o'clock at night, and now was there, speaking firmly, knowing that his value did not depend on obeying, but on existing. One Saturday in the afternoon, Mariana and Esteban stayed talking while Lucía was sleeping along, exhausted. Not by a school trip. "Any time you thought we would end up in this?" he asked. "Never," she replied, he smiling. "But I wouldn't change anything, not even the moments difficult, because us brought us here." Mariana nodded. The past was no longer a wound open, but a scar that reminded them how much had grown up. That afternoon, with the house in silence and the aroma of coffee in the air, both understood that the family they built was not conventional, but deeply real. At the next appointment with the school psychologist, Lucía surprised everyone with their affirmation, simple but powerful. "Before, I thought I had to be perfect to be loved. Now I know they love me even when I get angry or make mistakes." The professional scored that phrase carefully, knowing that it summarized a process deep emotional. When he told her to Stephen, he kept it like a treasure, because it wasn't just a breakthrough in the girl's therapy. It was a sign, clear that the love they had built was safe, solid, free of conditions. One Sunday rainy, Esteban told Lucía a history invented about a girl who lived in a tower and a man who didn't know as get it down without breaking anything. "And what happened at the end?" asked Lucía, curious. "That the man didn't rescue her. He waited for her, down, patiently, until she decided lower alone." Lucía stayed thoughtfully and then murmured, "Like you." Esteban caressed her. That metaphor, which had came out without much planning, became one of his story's preferred, because in that tower symbolic, he there was expected with the heart open, and she, brave, had lowered. The foundation directed for Mariana began to receive recognition, national, soon other women. They began to share their stories publicly, inspired by his bravery. Stephen, although always discreet, financed much of the operations and helped build a legal and psychological support network for victims. Lucía, each time further aware of everything they had lived, asked one day if could do something too. "Of course," Mariana replied. "Your story can also help." So was how Lucía recorded a short video telling, in the words of a child, what had happened, learned about love, respect, and hope. That video went viral more than they expected. Media, schools, and organizations, they asked permission to use it as resource educational. See your daughter become in symbol of resilience. Childish moved deeply to Esteban. "Never I imagined that one such a little girl could touch so many hearts," he said to Mariana. "Nor I, but he does, because speaks from the truth, and that always arrives," he replied. What began as an emergency had occurred turned in a chain of changes, and Lucía, without intending to, was the invisible thread that united everyone, those who some once felt invisible. This channel can only continue to exist if you join us. Subscribe now and be part of this network of hearts awake. Upon completion 8 years, Lucía did not ask toys, neither a huge party. He wanted to spend the day with his people, like he said They prepared a meal among the three, invited to some friends from school, and decorated his garden with garlands handmade. During the snack, Lucía stood about a chair, and without anyone expecting it, he stood up his glass of juice. Cheers for the families that are chosen, for the hugs that heal, and for the dads who are not born with you. But tea find the same. Nobody said anything some seconds. Everyone applauded afterwards. Esteban had to go into the kitchen to keep from crying. In front of everyone, that night, already in pajamas, Lucía asked could sleep in Esteban's bed. Not because had fear, but because yes, They went to bed together, she with her head in his chest, he with his hand on his back. "You know something, Dad?" he whispered. "Sometimes I forget what my life was like before. I just remember this," and he stayed asleep. Esteban watched her while he breathed slowly, with that peace that only they have, the children, when they feel beloved. "I didn't need sleep." That phrase had given him the best birthday present I could have received. The certainty that it was worth it. In an interview for a magazine specialized in leadership human, they asked him to Esteban, which there was been he moment further difficult of your life. "Professional," he answered without hesitation. "The day I understood that the company I was running protected abusers. And the second further difficult was look in the mirror and accept that I there was been part of the silence." Then the journalist asked him by he moment further valuable. Stephen smiled. "The first time I heard Lucía call me Dad without fear, that answer didn't come out published complete, but was left recorded in the heart of the one who heard it. During a hike in a park, Lucía told him to Esteban that one schoolmate felt sad because her parents were leaving, separating. I told him not all the potatoes live in the same house, but they can love you same, just like you and Mom love me." Esteban bent down beside her height and said to him, "What you told him is very wise." Lucía thought about it for a second and added, "I learned it here." He pointed Esteban's chest with his finger. "Because you taught me without saying it. Sometimes." The lessons further. Deep meanings are not conveyed with words, but with presence constant. One night, Esteban found a notebook in Lucia's backpack. It was full of drawings and phrases written in pencil. Some were stories invented, others were memories royals. Among them, one page, he said, "My father taught me that one doesn't have to be strong all he time, which can also be cry and continue forward." That phrase disarmed him. There was dedicated years to build an image of invulnerable strength, and now his daughter thanked him by showing him that you can also be fragile. It was the first. Once he understood that vulnerability was not the opposite of strength, but part of it. Mariana also changed with him time. He no longer spoke from the pain, but from experience. It became reference for others women, received invitations to write articles, and even went recognized by an organization international. In one of his speeches he said, "I rebuilt myself as woman, but also as a mother. And part of that was, accept that another person loved my daughter as much as I. It's not a threat, it's a gift." Esteban, who was listening to her from the front row, he felt a gratitude difficult to put on in words. "Because I knew that path shared was what gave Lucía a childhood complete." One afternoon, while ordered toys, Lucía asked him to Esteban, yes, one day they would write a book together. "And what about would you try?" he asked, curious. "About us. About how sometimes you find your family after you're born." Esteban looked at her with a mixture of tenderness and wonder. That girl had a way of understanding life that he had not accomplished in decades. "Then we will write it down," he promised, "so that no one think you are alone when his family is not like that of the others." Lucía nodded enthusiastically. For her, telling his history was a way of sharing hope. As you approach the end of the year, our school organized a ceremony to recognize the students with contributions special to the community. Lucía received a diploma for strength and empathy transformative. Upon taking the stage, instead of thanking alone, she asked Mariana and Esteban to come up. "I wouldn't be strong without them," he said, "because being strong is not doing all alone, is knowing who ask help." The audience stood up. Stephen felt that he was not seeing a little girl common. "I was watching too." Someone who had turned his scars into light, and he understood, all at once, time by all, that this was their greatest victory. On the last day of school, Lucía brought home a box with works of the year, drawings, notebooks, small crafts. Among them, there were a sheet that said, "What do I want to be when I grow up?" And the answer was clear. "I want to be like my dad from the heart, helping people when nobody more does it." Esteban held that role for a long time, without speaking. Not because we'll need time to understand it, but because his heart needed space to feel it. There was invested his life in build empires, and now understood that his true legacy was in those words written in pencil. One summer night, the three, they went out to the patio with blankets and lanterns to fulfill one of the Lucia's wish list, sleeping under the stars. They went to bed in the grass. They said stories and laughed until the dream the one. In the midst of silence at night, Lucia murmured half asleep, "Thank you for choose me, Dad." And Esteban answered in low voice, "Thank you for leave you find, daughter." Mariana, lying on her back other side, smiled without opening the eyes. Under that sky open, nothing more witnesses that the moon sealed an invisible pact that did not need blood, neither signatures, the pact of a family born of love. They passed the months, and with them, new ones beginnings. Lucía started to write a diary, Mariana opened a second headquarters of the foundation, and Esteban delegated further responsibilities in the company to be able to accompany better the moments important. He was no longer the man who arrived first and left last. It was the one that carried his daughter to art class, the one who cooked Tuesdays with the family, the one who learned recipes from the internet to surprise her. Her office, once sterile and silent, now had drawings glued on the wall, one cup with hearts and even a stuffed animal that Lucía insisted on, in which he took care of the issues. One rainy day, while they saw a movie in his sofa, Lucía looked at him seriously and asked, "Do you think that all the children have a place where they feel insurance?" Esteban hesitated before answering. "I hope so, but I think many they still are searching." Lucía curled up in his chest. "So, when I grow up, I'll to help them find it. Like you did with me." That "when I grow up" sounded further stronger than any promise, because it was the confirmation that the love that had received would not remain alone in she, but would continue traveling, playing others' lives. In a family talk, Mariana proposed to Stephen to write together a manual for companies about as create work environments safe, from the experience that both had lived. He accepted without hesitation, not as an image project, but as a real responsibility. If we can prevent another Mariana from losing her voice, or another Lucía from ending up cleaning night offices, there will be. It was worth it, said Esteban. The book was published months later, with a prologue by Lucía. I had only a few lines. This book is for the great ones who dare to listen to the small ones. During a meeting company's annual meeting, Esteban shared a last reflection before giving in. I send a new team manager. For years, I thought that leading was deciding by everyone. Today, I know that leading is listening, including and repairing. Thanks to a girl, I learned that there was a long, heartfelt applause. No one asked his name. I didn't do missing. Everyone knew who he was, and in that closing symbolic, Esteban felt that he was not abandoning his power, but freeing oneself from a version of yes, same one that I no longer needed, because he place where further lack toward it was no longer the presidency. It was his home. Life continued, without great shocks, but full of moments that were worth it. Lucía fulfilled 9, then 10, with new ones, questions, new insecurities, new discoveries. Mariana continued accompanying her with tenderness, and Esteban with firmness and patience. Each stage came with his own chaos, but also with new versions of the same certainty, that family worked because there was been chosen with conscience, not by obligation, not by custom, for love, and that made her further stronger than any other. In a school exhibition on the types of family, Lucía closed his presentation with a phrase that summarized all. Real dads are not made in the belly, they are made in he heart. There wasn't need for explanation additional. That phrase already contained the whole story. Stephen, sitting in the last row, he breathed deep and squeezed strong a notebook where there was noted each stage of his journey with her. What began as an interruption in his office had been converted. In a chapter further important of your life, in the last your-page diary, Lucía wrote, "Before I survived, now I live." And next to it, he drew a house with 3 windows, a dog invented, and a door always open. That image, simple but powerful, represented everything they had built. There was no longer secrets, nor fear, nor silence. Just one little girl growing up with freedom, a mother who healed, and a father of the heart who, without looking for it, had found his purpose, and so, without fires artificial nor perfect endings, close that story of redemption, family, and chosen love, because there are bonds that don't need surnames, nor blood, nor contracts. They only need perseverance, listening, and a heart willing. Esteban Lara, the man who had it all less the essentials, he had finally done it, found in a place less expected. In the eyes of a girl who, "Evening, anyone?" he asked. "Stay. Are you here? Reading this? Then make it worthwhile. Subscribe, comment, and share. It's the only way we can continue."